Hey everybody, it's Anna and welcome back to my booktube channel. This video is going to be in the interest of me making wrap-up videos more consistently because I feel like I don't make those as often as I want to. And so I'm gonna try very carefully to hopefully get some weekly reading wrap-up videos going. We'll see how that works out because my schedule can be kind of variable from week to week. So this video is going to be wrapping up all of the books that I read after the reading rush. A bunch of these I got from the library, so I'll just be reading the info off of my Goodreads on my phone. So the first book that I finished after the reading rush was over was The Backstages and the Ghostlight by Andy Mientus. This is a, I guess, middle grade, maybe it's YA, I'm not really sure, novel about the Backstagers of the comic book series. They're a group of kids that go to a boys' school, and they are the backstage theater techs for the school's theater, and there are magical portals that open up to different universes and things behind the stage. So I read this because sadly the comic book series has come to an end, and I really wanted to see more of these characters and more of the world. The book is actually illustrated by the same artist who did the comic book series, so that was also a plus. Clearly there wasn't as much art because it is just a straight up novel, but I enjoyed it and I ended up rating it 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. It's her second novel. It's a YA novel about Imani, who is a single teen mom that is trying to finish up high school, parent a toddler, and also follow her dreams of becoming a chef. She has this sort of magical knack for cooking and ingredients and a really good instinct for food. And so she's basically trying to balance all of the demands of her life, which is pretty exceptional for most teenagers. I don't think most teenagers kind of have to go through as much responsibility as Imani really does because she is a parent while she's still in high school. So I completely adored this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I thought that the writing was just incredible. It really gave me a good sense of place of who the characters were, and I absolutely loved the descriptions of cooking. I would definitely recommend this one. Then I read a book that I absolutely hated. I picked it up on a whim because I thought it sounded interesting, and I regretted it so much because I will never get that time back. And it's called The Orphan of Salt Winds by Elizabeth Brooks. So the reason why I picked this up was because it billed itself as this sort of spooky graphic novel that takes place in alternate timelines, one in the past during the World War II years in England and one in the present, and there's a lady with a spooky old house. And I thought it was going to be great. It was not great. It was terrible. It was all of the stuff that makes Gothic literature good, the foreboding, foreshadowing, and creepy characters and mysterious messages and things like that, was so heavy-handed that instead of creating some spun sugar tense suspense atmosphere, it just crushed it flat with a total lack of subtlety. So you basically knew exactly what was going to happen, but you couldn't even enjoy it because the writing handled the plotting so poorly that it didn't really leave any room for suspense and surprise and, psychological engagement with the work. And on top of that, this is one of those books in which the dog dies in a really gruesome way. Towards the end of the book, the bad guy kills a dog in a gruesome way. And as soon as I read that, I yelled, "I'm done," and I just chucked the book across the room, startling my husband, who was sitting next to me on the couch, and up until this point, I had been silently reading, and then he just sees me throwing a book across the room because that's how bad this was. I'm really glad that it's over. I rated it 1 out of 5 stars just because it was a total waste of time. If you want to read Gothic suspense, just, do yourself a favor and read something by Daphne du Maurier, because then you'll actually enjoy it, and you'll like it. Okay, after that, I read 2 novellas by Philip Pullman that are companions to his Dark Materials series, Lyras Oxford and Once Upon a Time in the North. Lyras Oxford is a short story about Lyra and Pantaleimon that have to help a witch's demon that has been separated from her human. And Once Upon a Time in the North is the origin story for the explorer Lee Scoresby and the armored polar bear Yorick. Whew. Let's start with Lyras Oxford, shall we? So this book really just read more like a part of a deleted chapter from the main series. So it was kind of unnecessary that this even really be published at all, except maybe to line Philip Pullman's pockets. I did not care about the story. What little of it there was very rushed, not well fleshed out at all, and really ultimately very unsatisfying, because if I did not have access to like the prior knowledge of the world building he had done in the book series, his Dark Materials series, I would not have wanted to continue reading it based off of this book alone. Once Upon a Time in the North did that a little bit better, mostly because Pullman had to do some more world building for his like Arctic political faction setup. This one was still, though, just okay, because again, it relies a lot on the character development for the protagonists that take place in the original trilogy. So you don't really know very much about them if you are just picking this book up, and I can see reading this not wanting to, go and read the rest of the trilogy. So I gave Lyras Oxford 2 out of 5 stars, and I gave Once Upon a Time in the North 3 out of 5 stars. Okay, next up were 3 really excellent reads. I read 3 5-star reads back to back to back, which was super awesome. The first one of those was a nonfiction library book. It was called Code Girls by Liza Mundy, and it is the story of a bunch of the women who worked as secret code breakers during World War II. It's great if you are a fan of stories like The Imitation Game, anything about, Alan Turing, cryptography, spies, etc. But this book was not only really excellent history writing, but actually also moved me very much emotionally. Like, I found myself kind of tearing up at the end of the book when I was reading about what became of all of these women that were just brilliant mathematicians, scientists, and problem solvers who, after the war was over, many of them were not able to get jobs in their chosen fields and working with, science and codes and everything like that, because it wasn't seen as patriotic for women to continue working after the men came home from war. And many of them, really quite literally ended up taking these secrets to their graves. The information about the code breaking, this one especially focuses on the code breaking that happened for the war in the Pacific, was actually only recently declassified in some cases because Liza Mundy asked for documents to be declassified as part of her writing process for this book. And it really was just incredible. I learned things that I didn't know about world history. I learned things that I had really no idea about in terms of World War II. I think a lot of my education in school for World War II was focused on the European theater, and then obviously, talking about the Holocaust. And anything I did know about cryptography was mostly focused on Alan Turing and the Bletchley Circle, which was the group of mathematicians in Cambridge that cracked the Enigma code. If you want to read more about that, I would highly recommend the book Turing's Cathedral. I'll link that down below. That one is a bit more technical than Code Girls was. Code Girls is more of a history book. Turing's Cathedral is a little bit more of a history of science book. So as such, it delves a bit more into the technical aspects of code breaking and computing and creating these machines. But that is also a really excellent book, as was Code Girls. I gave that one 5 out of 5. Then I had a couple of, sort of those nights where you can't really fall asleep and then you also wake up really early in the morning. So I was really exhausted and I didn't want to do anything except for just read something short and satisfying. So I ended up reading 2 short books in that circumstance. The first one was The Non-Existent Night, which is a novella translated from Italian, and the author is Italo Calvino. He's famous for all of his sort of postmodernist novels and essays about aesthetics and translating fairy tales from Italian into English, etc. And I really liked this book so very much. It is a story that is written down by a nun who's a chronicler, and it is the story of a knight who quite literally does not exist. He is just an empty suit of armor going around walking, talking, and fighting in wars with Charlemagne. And it is a really interesting commentary on the way that stories like these chansons and the early novels were written down about knights and the Crusades and all of that sort of part of history. It reminded me a lot of T.H. White's more comedic modernist take on the Arthurian legends and the once and future king. And I thought that I was really glad, actually, that I had read parts of Orlando Furioso earlier this year. Fariba on the Medieval Reader channel had done like a little read-along for that epic poem. And I'm really glad that I read that before I read this, because who should show up in this non-existent knight book but our favorite Lady Knight Bradamant, and she was a great character. I would definitely recommend this, especially if you are interested in writing about writing or medieval stories. And then the final book that I read in that week between the reading rush and my next readathon was Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. This is a book that I heard a lot of buzz about but didn't actually know anything about when I picked it up, except that it had been translated from Japanese and it was really popular in Japan. And after reading it, I can really see why, because this story is so condensed but powerful and potent at the same time. So it's the story of this woman, Kiko, who is very happy with her life working part-time at a convenience store, but no one else is happy with the direction that her life is taking. Everyone in her life is worried that she's settling for not enough in her career. They're worried that she doesn't have any, marriage prospects. She's 36 and single. Oh my God, like that's the worst possible crime a woman can commit. But she really loves working at the convenience store. She loves the order and rhythm and predictability of the days. It's never explicitly stated in the book, but I did get the sense that she's pretty heavily coded as autistic, just because of things that she as a character says when she talks about both her adult life and her child life. So you could read it that way, but again, it's not explicit, so I wouldn't go so far as to say that it is autistic rep. But I really enjoyed this book because it is about how she tries to deal with the fact that everyone thinks that her life should be different than how it is. It gets very dark in places. It's very funny. It's got like a very wicked gallows sense of humor, and I totally enjoyed it. And then finally, before I wrap up this video, this isn't really related to books that I read for this wrap-up, but I did get my trophies for the Book Junkie Trials. They finally arrived in the mail a little bit later last week, so I have my little scribe trophy, which is for completing the challenges for my team, and then I also have my Book Junkie Quest Champion trophy, because if you watch my Reading Rush vlogs, I was fortunately able to read enough that I became a Quest champion. So thank you very much to Rachel Marie for hosting that and putting it all together. I had so much fun, and I can't wait to do it again next year. Speaking of quests, you may have heard in previous videos that I am on a quest to get 300 subscribers by the end of this year. So if you like this video and you'd like to see more from me, please do subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. Also, feel free to like and comment down below any of your thoughts on these books, whether you think that weekly wrap-ups are something that would interest you to watch, and anything else that you'd like to share with me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.